Hello, Allie.
Hi. This is Liverpool, USA, and we're best friends, and this is a best friends podcast. I think I said that in a different order than I usually do.
That's okay. It still
Um,
gets the point across.
yeah. Today we're doing something difficult,
Yeah.
which is that we are talking about our top 10 favorite bands.
And I kind of decided it's top 10 favorite bands of like this era in our life, not of all time. Because I feel like those are similar, but also notably different lists.
Yeah, because and I'll talk more about this once we actually get into our lists. But there are bands that I took off of my because originally I made it as like my top 10 bands of my life, right? And there are some bands that it's like, okay, this was so important to me at one stage in my life, but like I'm not really into it anymore, you know? Um that I took off and put other things on that are more important to me right now, but are more recent, like discoveries, things like that.
Yeah, and I've kind of got a mix as well. There's like some bands on here that are definitely bands of all time,
Yeah,
but that are like I would still consider relevant and just like have to be on the list somewhere.
yeah.
But there's also bands that are very much like very more recently in my life have become like top bands. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Yeah, there are definitely some bands on this list that are bands that I consider like top bands of my life, but they're top bands of my life and also top bands of right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because obviously lots of the bands that are top bands of your entire life are going to be important right now also,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, but I this was an interesting exercise as it always is. I remember I made a list kind of similar to this like years ago, like 4 years ago maybe. That was it wasn't even 10. I think it was like 13 or something like that, like just a
Oh,
random
yeah.
number. But it was like my favorite albums of all time, and just like comparing that list to this list, which I didn't like base this list off of that one. I made them separately and then I just like compared them after I was done. And I was like, much to think about. Like,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
there's overlap and obviously some things have changed and
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, on a
Yeah, we
scale from 1 to 10, how difficult was this for you?
this was I mean on a scale, I don't know. It was very difficult. It was very
Very difficult.
like yeah, and I have so many favorite bands and so many bands that I love, and it's like how do you measure the importance of a band, and
Yeah.
like how and I feel like I kind of did it in like what are the bands that I like intentionally keep up on,
Mhm.
and like I am very in touch with what they're releasing, when they're releasing it, what they're doing, like more
Yeah.
than others. And then also like what are the bands that I consistently enjoy their discography? Because I have bands that
Yeah.
I absolutely love, but it's like they have like one or two albums that I absolutely love, and then maybe I like don't know the other ones as well.
Yeah, I
And then
was thinking
like
about
stuff
this
like
too.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was thinking about this too because there were a couple of bands that I immediately put on the list and I was like, okay, but I only like what I'm saying is that there's like three songs by this band that mean more to me than like most other bands or like most other songs. But the rest of their discography, I like either don't listen to because I just haven't listened to it or it's just like not as good to me or like I don't know. Like there's this band Armors, which is so random and they're not even a band anymore. They don't even have an album out. They have like I don't know, like 12 singles or something. Like that's it.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, is this really a band that's like on my top 10 list of bands of all time? Because like they don't even have an album out, and also they're not a band anymore. And really, it's just one guy, and like also there's like two songs or three songs that literally like they have been in my top five Spotify song things like years in a row, like since I discovered them. Like
Yeah.
last year, my top song was an Armor song. I think the year before that, my second song or my third song was an Armor song. And I think the year before that, there was an Armor song in my top 5 as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, okay, I love those songs so much and they mean a lot to me, but I cannot put Armors as one of my top 10 bands because like it's really 3 songs by one guy that I care about a lot. And that's it.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely get that. Yeah. Yeah, cuz and that's that would be the difference like you said, and we should definitely do a separate episode about this sometime of like my favorite albums versus my top
Yeah.
bands. Like
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
They are different lists. Obviously there's overlap with
Yeah,
the artists
definitely.
and everything, but like yeah, specifically top bands versus top albums is a different conversation because I'm considering the full discography of all of these bands.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't even it's good that we didn't establish a specific criteria, but it sounds like we pretty much judged like in a very similar way.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
yeah.
anticipating that our lists are going to have a lot of overlap, and I think that the way we should handle it is saying that we both have like whenever somebody says, okay, this band is on my list at, you know, whatever this number is, then the other person says this band is also on my list, and then we discuss, and when the other person gets to that band we can kind of just move on,
Okay.
because I don't think we should talk about every band twice basically.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, so how do you want I know that we also both we have ranked lists from
Mhm.
like 10 to 1,
Yeah.
1 being like the top, right?
Yeah.
For you as well, yeah. But
Yeah.
then also I know that they're vaguely ranked. Like mine is
Yeah.
like yeah, like 1 is like probably definitely 1, but the
Yeah.
rest are kind of like vaguely ranked, so they
Me
could really
too.
be, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 up or down. So,
Me too. I
yeah.
think we'll just go with our list from 10 to
Yes.
1, just as they are. And yeah, I think we'll both just note that this is not a definitive ranking. This is like,
Yeah.
we had to put them in some order, so we did.
Yeah.
And also like some of my bands can't be compared to each other, you know, like they're just different. So like,
Right.
you know,
That
they're
that
not
made it
going to
kind of hard
be,
too. Yeah.
yeah. Also, I think the hardest part for me was not ranking number 1, it was ranking number 10.
Uh-huh.
Because I was like, what band am I gonna include on this list? But like I got 1 through 9 pretty quickly, and then trying to choose one last band to like include in this list was really difficult for me.
I definitely just wrote down. I don't know how you thought of bands, but the way that I did it is I actually looked at all of my CDs that I have out because
Yeah.
I think that was like the easiest way, and a little bit my Spotify. But my CDs
Yeah.
is like, okay, these are definitely the bands that I'm committed enough that I have multiple CDs. And so I
Yeah.
looked at, and of course I just thought of some like off the top of my head, but to make sure I looked at all my CDs. I definitely got more than 10. I have a short list of honorable mentions.
I have honorable mentions as well.
And I had to like yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, I did go and sit on my floor and look through all my vinyl and my CDs as
Exactly.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and think about that. I did look through my Spotify as well because I do notice that what I play in my house on my record player in my CD player is really different than what I listen to on Spotify.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
kind of
I'm
too,
always very interested, like when I get that Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. I'm like, what would
yeah,
this look like if it included the CDs that I listen to all year as well? You know,
yeah,
it'd be
yeah,
different, interesting.
exactly.
Yeah,
Okay, well, without further
yeah.
ado,
Let's get into it.
should we do number 10? Do you want to go first?
Sure. My
Yeah.
number 10, which is like we kind of said, this is a vague ranking.
Yes.
So my number 10 is Green Day.
Okay, Green Day is also on my list.
Okay.
So let's discuss Green Day. I think Green
Okay.
Day is like just the most classic to me. Like obviously not the most classic in terms of like rock music, right? But Green Day is the first. I was reflecting on this the other day because you don't know about this because you're not on TikTok. But
No, I'm not.
okay, but I am on TikTok, and you know what I do on TikTok is I review my own record collection.
Oh, that's cute actually.
So I like go through my records, and everyone I review it, and I say like why I like it, or you know whatever, and like why it's in my collection, and if it looks cool, you know, like that kind of thing. Very fun. But I just did American Idiot by Green Day, and I was like thinking about how one of my like core memories, one of my like first music memories is when American Idiot came out, and my mom and I went to the store to buy it that day. Like we bought the CD that
Oh
day.
wow. Oh yeah, because your mom is into like that kind of music.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I remember like when American Idiot came out, and I remember listening to it in the car on the way home from like, I don't know, Target or wherever we bought it from.
Yeah.
And that being like really important. And also my mom and I like discussing when I mean, I don't know how old I was, like 7, maybe 6, I don't know. Discussing the concept of a no skips album.
Really?
You know, yeah, because my mom was like, "Oh, this is no skips," and I was like, "Yeah, this is no skips." And like that was my first like concept of a no skips album was American Idiot by Green Day. And so
That's
to
really
me,
funny.
Green Day is like classic. It is core to like me as a person who listens to music.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that I would agree with as well. And it's funny because I also have that kind of brought up a memory that I have. I don't know if it was right after it was released, but I know that I was very young. And I remember, and I think it was like from like Best Buy or something like that.
Yeah.
Rich bought American Idiot.
Nice.
My stepdad. I remember him buying it and that being like a thing, you know. And I remember hearing Green Day on the radio, you know, growing up and everything, and thinking that it was good and enjoying it. But for a lot of my life, I didn't, because now, and pretty much starting in high school, my personality pretty much is defined by like the bands that I like, and I'm very into bands. Like that is what I do. Is I am into bands.
Yeah.
And like some people, there's a lot of people that they just like music. You know, they don't necessarily have like a favorite artist. They just listen to music, whatever. But I like am very band like loyal.
Yeah.
So I remember being young and like liking Green Day, you know, and like being into their songs when I heard them on the radio, and having like, you know, there's like those songs that you hear when you're young and you're like, what about 21 Guns? Like like how was I feeling that so hard at like, you know, 10 or whatever? Like what about it was, you know, as like a 10-year-old, and Boulevard of Broken Dreams, you know. But,
I know. I remember like I had this green iPod Nano, and there was like, it was that time when, I mean, you know, streaming services didn't exist or anything for like music. And so the way I had music on my iPod was it would be whatever CDs my mom had that she could like put on my iPod for me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, because otherwise you had to buy them individually and it was like $2 a song or whatever. And so my mom would just like, you know, put her CDs into, I don't know how she did it, but she put it into Apple Music somehow, or into iTunes, and then put it on our iPods. And I remember, so I got to choose like whatever albums I wanted from her CDs to like be on my iPod. And there was like 3 albums that I chose. And one of them was American Idiot. And one of them was like the Apocalyptica like album.
Oh, good.
And one of them was like a Blink-182 album, I think.
Good. Oh, so good.
And like that's all I listened to for like a year.
Wow.
Because that's what was on my iPod.
Yeah.
And I remember my favorite song on my iPod was Jesus of Suburbia.
Good.
It's just like why? Good. Yeah, why at like
as a child,
was I like, Jesus of Suburbia, this is my jam. Like,
yeah. So and then it wasn't until high school that I like got into Green Day, like listened to them very much on purpose, bought CDs, you know, like got into them as a band, learned more about them. And I have actually, I for a moment I had like, because of course I'm still a huge fan of Green Day, very much, but there was definitely a significant span of my life where they were like my favorite like top band. I have this cool like book thing that's like a scrapbooky type thing that I bought at like some bookstore that's like Green Day, and I have I'm gonna say almost all of their albums, because I'm sure there's just like so many that are like weird special edition ones that I don't own, but I do have a very big Green Day CD collection.
Nice.
And 21st Century Breakdown is definitely a top album of all time as well. My favorite Green Day albums, I would actually say, are 21st Century Breakdown and Nimrod, which is funny because I feel like most people's are American Idiot or Dookie, which is valid, but like
Yeah.
that's just, you know, in my experience, those are my favorite. And there will always be, and I've said since it was actually in high school, and this is kind of like a random thing I feel like to think, but in high school I remember listening to Last Night on Earth and being like, I want this to be the first dance song at my wedding.
It's very
Like
sweet. That's very sweet.
specifically, it's
Yeah.
very like it's very very cute. So and oh, I've seen them twice. I know you've seen them once, right?
Once. Yeah. This year,
Yeah.
actually, in
Yeah.
September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw them when they were touring for Revolution Radio. Um and I saw them twice in a row, which is a
Yes.
story for a different day because that's a whole story.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
was absolutely amazing. Yeah. So Green Day's definitely like they're a band of all time. And they're
Yeah.
definitely like they're 10 on my list, but as a band of all time, they're like they would be a lot higher.
Yeah. Green Day is a lot higher on my list because I was considering them definitely as like do I listen to Green Day every day of my life? No. But like as like a cornerstone of my like rock upbringing,
Yeah, and
Green
music
Day
taste and
is
everything. Yeah,
yeah,
Green Day is
Green
very
Day is
important.
pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 10 is the 1975.
Oh, they're on my list too. I
Okay.
actually don't know if I would expected them to be on your list.
That's why I think they're number 10 for that reason. I do like the 1975 a lot, and I have liked them for a really long time, like since before like I liked them when that is it just called the 1975, the like Black
Yeah, their
Album?
first album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I
Um
got into them too. Yeah.
yeah.
They're like
That's
first.
that's when
Or
I
actually,
yeah,
sorry,
got
I was
into
just
them.
thinking it's funny. I remember how I got into them. It's kind of funny.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just heard them. This was like in my era of time where I like didn't pay attention to like who I was listening to. I just was like listening to things. And so they came up on my like Pandora or something. Like I think the song Chocolate was the one that I heard first. And I was like, okay, yeah, I like this. And so then I was like, this album is good. And I remember it was still when I had Pandora, and then I had an iTunes account that I would purchase music from. And so I was like, you know, it was a big deal when I decided to buy an album because I had to spend like literally $10 on it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I did. I bought that album and I like listened to it on my iPod and was pretty into that album. And so it was one of the only bands that I knew that I listened to because I bought it. Like if I bought it on my
Mm-hmm.
iTunes, then I knew I liked it, but otherwise it was just whatever Pandora played for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I remember they got kind of popular like right around that time too, like, you know, they were on the radio more. And then I think when it's like the white album that looks exactly the same as the black album, but it's
Yeah.
like I like it when you
I like it when
sleep.
you sleep for
Yeah.
you're so beautiful yet so unaware of it. I think is
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
Like yeah. Um
I think I have
and
that one signed. I like pre-ordered it from
ooh,
like Target and I didn't know it was going to be signed and it was. So
wow.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but then that one came out and I really liked that one too. And then yeah, I kind of kept up with them. I kind of didn't realize that they were one of my like top favorite bands, but they just kind of like have always been there for like the last,
Yeah.
you know, 8 years or whatever. And I know most of their songs. Like I think that's a marker. It's like if I know the entire discography, then it must be like an important band to me.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like a sneaky like, oh, is the 1975 like part of my top 10? And then they were. I kind of had some other people that I was maybe thinking of including. I mentioned that number 10 was the hardest for me to choose.
Yeah.
Because I was like, which band do I include? And yeah, it ended up being the 1975, and I do stand by that. Like I think that they're a really good band. I own both those albums I just talked about, the Black Album and the White Album. That's what I call them in my head.
Yeah.
Even though one of them is the 1975 and one of them is the I
long
like it when you
title.
sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I have both of them on vinyl, and I listen to them all the time. So I'm like, yeah, it's them. It's
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yeah, and the 1975 is interesting for me because they're not like a lot of the other music that I listen to. Like,
Same.
I discovered them when I was listening to slightly different music, or like some of my music taste was different,
Yeah.
and then they just kind of stuck with me. I actually heard of them because there was a my favorite band in high school
Yeah.
that really was the beginning of my being obsessed with bands
Yeah.
era of my life, which is will be the rest of my life probably.
Yeah.
Was a band called R5,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not on this list. They would be on the list of bands of all time, but they're not a
Yeah.
band anymore. So
Yeah.
but they did a cover of Girls, and
Oh.
I heard the cover and I was like, "Oh, I like this." So I heard the original one and I was like, "This man's British accent is so thick."
Yeah.
And
That you
then
can't even understand him.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I was like, I love it. And then I think
Yeah.
I heard like Chocolate next, and then that was
Yeah.
when I was like discovering music by looking it up on YouTube. Like I
Yeah.
listened to like all their music on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um and then and I never had and well, I had an iTunes for a little bit when I was young because I got my stepsister's iPod, and the only way that I can get music on it was if I had an iTunes. But that's
Yeah.
like irrelevant. In high school, I was still just buying CDs, and I did have a little MP3 player. Um, but I think I probably got their CD from like we used to go to a store called Hastings that doesn't exist
Mhm.
anymore, and like just buy a bunch of CDs. So I
Yeah.
had their CD, and I used to just play CDs on my stereo like on repeat,
Yeah.
and until Spotify happened, and
Yeah.
then I had Spotify. But yeah, so and I've seen them twice, and they are those two concerts I have cried more than any other concert. Something about the
Wow.
1975 seeing them in
Yeah.
concert. The first time was the first time I really cried at a concert, and
Yeah.
I believe it was during the song called Me, which is a
Yeah.
very like teary song, so like that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And then the second time, I actually don't remember what song it was if they played Me, but the second time I like bawled like fully when I
Yeah.
saw them because I don't know, there's just something about the 1975, and Maddie Healy
Mhm.
is a very intriguing human being to me, and I could like more than like any other celebrity I want to just like sit down and have a conversation with him. I think
Yeah.
I'm like
Yeah.
your brain. What is it like? He's so interesting to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my like kind of some of my connection with the 1975. But yeah, they
Yeah.
just kind of constantly are, like doing things that intrigue me music wise, and
Same. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
love
I
them.
agree. Yeah, it was interesting that they made it onto my list. I was surprised by it, but once I had them on the list, I was like, no, actually, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah. Would you like to share your number 9?
My number 9 is another band of all time, so it had
Mm-hmm.
to be on the list somewhere, is
Mm-hmm.
Rush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rush is
Which I
not on
feel
my
like,
list, which I
yeah.
know you know.
Yeah. I mean, they are a dad band, as you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're my dad's favorite band. He is a
Yep.
huge fan of Rush, which I feel like a lot of fans of Rush are huge fans. Like, you can't really just be. I mean, I'm sure they exist, but I haven't really met a lot of just like casual fans of Rush. Like, if
Yeah.
someone's a fan of Rush, it's like a defining part of their personality,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
definitely my dad.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I was essentially raised on Rush, and they're a huge reason, along with my dad, of like why I play music and like why I chose to play the bass.
Yeah.
And like I do genuinely enjoy their music. Like they're not just a dad band. I will listen to them like on my own, like
Yeah.
on my like by my own choice. Um and I do think that they are genuinely very uh talented, and I'm a little bit biased or whatever, but some of the best musicians of all time, just in terms of just pure musicality and
Yeah.
genius. I mean, they're prog musicians, which are,
Mm-hmm.
usually very insane musicians in terms of skill. And so
Yeah.
they're just incredibly skilled on their instruments and incredibly iconic. And and so they're just, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Like they're a very, very important band to me, and I genuinely love them, and they are a band of all time. So
Yeah.
they could be like anywhere on this list because they are just like the overarching god of bands of all bands that are
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
on my favorites. So
I
yeah.
if we were doing like bands of all time, I would expect this to be your number 1, I think.
It would definitely be really difficult to like pick. I feel
Yeah.
like they could be a number one, but it's one of those things that it's like it's like it's like it needs its own list. It's like a
Yeah,
very,
I get it.
it's just because it's like the predecessor, they're like
Yeah,
the like reason for me liking any bands at all could arguably be Rush and like my
yeah.
personal, childhood relationship with them. So,
I think that's how I feel about Green Day.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Which
little
is
bit. I
funny
have
because
another
my
band
dad
on
kind of
this
likes
list.
Green Day too, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another band on this list that is, I think, more like what you're describing, and I'll get to it when I
Mm,
get to it, I guess. But yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, in order to keep this
Yeah, I know.
going, because we're only on number 9. What is your number 9?
My number 9 is the Front Bottoms.
Oh, you know what? I like um I kind of thought about him for a second. I was like, "Oh, should they be? Should they
Yeah.
be?" And I didn't put them on the list, but they were thought
Yeah.
of. Yeah.
Yeah. They are my number 9, right? They're not like at the top of the list. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think lyrically the Front Bottoms are important to me. They have a lot of lyrics
Yeah.
that mean something to me, and that's enough for them to make it on the list, I think. Also, I just listen to them a lot, I think, and that's enough for them to be on this list. Is, like, they're constantly, the last, I don't know, 4 years or so, they've always been in
Yeah.
my top Spotify artists, and their songs have always been in my top Spotify songs. And I can sit, like, right now, every day, pretty much, I like listen to a song by the Front Bottoms. Like, they're just always in my everyday listening, and they have been for the last like 4 years.
Yeah,
So
they are just kind of like in my playlists and they come on
yeah.
pretty constantly. And I don't even like really think about it because it's just like they're just a constant, They've just been
Yeah.
on my playlist for years now. How did you discover the Front Bottoms?
You.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
wondering. I was like, was it me? Yeah.
Yeah. I think we talked about this on the podcast.
Oh yeah, we
but,
on the
like,
train. Yeah,
we were
yeah.
on the train, and
Okay.
you were like, "You got to hear this band,"
Yeah.
and then I did, and here we are.
Yeah, pretty much. And now we've seen them once together.
Yeah.
And I saw them one other time in college with a different friend.
Yeah.
I have a lot of very fond memories tied to the Front Bottoms. I discovered
Me
them.
too.
My best friend from high school
Yeah.
showed them to me, and they're definitely like, I don't know, it's really weird because they're not like, Brian Sella isn't, I don't know, an opera singer or whatever,
Right.
like
Yeah.
they're just like some guys that
Yeah.
made arguably shitty music that's good,
Yeah. I mean, notice how I said lyrically.
Yeah.
Important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say musically. I mean, I don't know. I think that they do the style of music that they do really well, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's
no
not a
one
lot
can
of
do what
people-
they do like them. Like, they do
Yeah.
what they do. It's very unique in a way that makes it stand out. I
Yeah.
remember listening to them and being like, I don't know about this, but then I kept listening to them, and then
Yeah.
you like get more and more into it. So
Yeah.
there's definitely something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my number 9, the Front Bottoms.
Okay.
Number
Sweet.
8.
Number 8 for me is another band of all time that could have been anywhere on this list, which
Yeah.
is Fall Out Boy.
Fall Out Boy is also on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no arguing that Fall Out Boy is like essential to the type of music that we listen to.
Yeah. Fall Out
Like,
Boy is like on my bands of all time list, they would also be fighting for the number 1 spot. And the only reason why I would not, if someone asked me, what's your favorite band? The only reason why now, in the very recent time, that I would not say Fall Out Boy is because of their recent discography. And I don't dislike it. It's just
it's not
like
same.
it's just not my top, and it's not the same as like
Yeah.
pre-hiatus Fall Out Boy is my top. Like,
Yeah.
definitely. Like, it's so important to me. In terms
Yeah.
of discography collection, my Fall Out Boy CDs will come with me everywhere I go until the day that I die.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
am like very passionate about them.
Mhm.
And it's funny because actually Save Rock and Roll, it was so like I knew who Fall Out Boy was, and like I knew their popular songs on the radio, whatever. But
Yeah.
it was actually when Save Rock and Roll came out, I remember when My Song Know What You Did in the Dark came out, And that was like a huge deal. It was like, oh, Fall Out Boy's back. And I was like, oh, they were gone? Because I didn't know anything about them before
Yeah,
that, you
yeah.
know? But when Save Rock and Roll, or when My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark came out, I was really into it.
Mhm.
And it came out around the time when I was starting to get more into like alternative and rock genres and
Yeah.
stuff. And like in when I think I was in high school, right? Yeah, I was in high school.
Mhm.
And then I remember going and buying Save Rock and Roll and like listening to it in the car, and it became like a regular car song, like when we would go places with
Yeah.
mom, or car CD. So we just
Mhm.
listened to it constantly in the car, and it was just like my favorite album ever. Like, I was
Yeah.
just in love with it. So, which it's still, a top. But then after that, I decided, oh, I want to get more into more Fall Out Boy. And I
Yeah.
bought like their previous albums. And I was like, oh, these are like a little bit different than this sound, but I maybe even like it more, which I still love Save Rock and Roll,
Yeah.
but my favorite Fall Out Boy album, I think I would say, is From Under the Cork Tree, which is one of their
Yeah.
first ones. And
I think
so,
mine is
yeah,
Infinity on High.
yeah,
It just
that makes sense. Yeah,
it just
yeah,
goes.
it
But
does.
yeah. Yeah, Fall Out Boy for me, I don't know when I discovered Fall Out when I like discovered Fall Out Boy. I mean, I definitely
Mm-hmm.
was like aware of it before I was like into it, like kind of the same way. I mean, Fall Out Boy was like popular, it was like on the radio. Like Sugar We're Going Down was on the radio.
Yeah, yeah, and Thanks for the
Um
Memories were like
yeah,
the two big ones.
yeah. Now that you just said that, I know when it was that I got into Fall Out Boy,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a funny story. We had this game on the Wii that was like
Okay.
the title of the game was Boogie Superstar. So just let that paint a picture for you.
Okay.
And this game, it was kind of like the dance game. What was the dance game? Was it just called Just Dance?
Like
Yes.
DDR? Oh, Just Dance. Oh, okay.
Yes. So like there was like that Wii game where you would like dance, It was like that mixed with like karaoke also.
Oh, interesting.
It was like both. And they had a bunch of songs on there. And one of them was Thanks for the Memories.
Wow.
And so I heard that song a lot of times, and I remember it was censored because it was like a game for kids, and so the song was like censored. Which I'm like, don't put it in there if you're gonna censor it. I don't know. There was like some other like pop punk like icons on that game.
Good.
Really exposed me to some good music.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that song was on there, and then I like looked it up, and then I was like aware of like, oh, this is Fall Out Boy, and they wrote like Sugar We're Going Down and like this and blah blah blah, and then I kind of went from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fall Out Boy is important.
Yeah. My graduation cap from high school I bought I think they were technically mailbox stickers, so they're like shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like kind of cool looking, and I bought some of those and wrote "Thanks for the Memories" on my like high school graduation cap.
Nice.
Yeah, like spelled out without any of the vowels. Yeah. Fall Out Boy is just so tied into just like my identity at this point as a musical person, but also just as a human being. That band of all time. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I saw Fall Out Boy also this year when I saw Green Day.
I've seen them once, and I need to see them again so bad, because it was when I was still getting into going to concerts a lot. Oh, that's another thing about Rush, is that was my first concert, and I saw them 6 times. Yeah, so they're also like the reason why I love concerts. But I saw Fall Out Boy once, but I was really inexperienced with crowd stuff, and it was just an awful crowd. Like no one in that crowd seemed like they knew what they were doing, including me. But it was incredible, but I need to see them again. But anyway, once is not enough, and does not make any sense. Like their ranking on my bands of all time list does not like it should also be higher on my bands that I've seen the most list.
Yeah,
but they just make it hard.
Yeah.
But so okay, your number 8.
My number 8 is Neck Deep.
They're on my list too.
Yeah. And Neck Deep, it's surprising to me that they are this low. But I think it's because they have one album that means absolutely everything to me, and then another album that means a medium amount to me, and then the rest just kind of doesn't mean like a ton to me, I guess. I think
Yeah.
that's why they're so low. They have one song that literally is probably in the running for like my favorite song of all time.
Yeah.
Which, as you know, is Smooth Seas Don't Make Good Sailors.
Yep.
But other than that, I mean, all of that album is amazing. Life's Not Out to Get You. But I love Neck Deep, and I love like their personality, and I love that album. But as like a whole, in terms of a band, there are just bands that I love more music from that have to just be higher.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. For me, Neck Deep is actually they're also probably a band of all time for me at this point. I discovered them in high school again when I was getting more into, like pop punk and rock and more like alternative stuff.
Yeah.
And that was when they had like only Wishful Thinking and like Rain in July, like their first two albums, which is like the most raw stuff that they had. And that's what I was getting into. And I specifically remember when I was really getting into it, and I discovered these two songs, and they're pretty raw, they're pretty chaotic, and I remember like showing them to my ex-boyfriend at the time, and him being a little bit like because I'm like, look at these songs that I found that I really like, because they're like a little much, I think, for some people.
Yeah.
And it's actually their last two albums that I'm into, but I'm like slightly less into than everything Life's Not Out to Get You and before. So like they have like 5 albums, and their first 3 I'm like albums of all time, and their last 2 I'm like I like them, but like they don't hit me as in the same way. And I have seen them multiple times. I've seen them at least twice at Warped Tour. And then once finally with you. Was it with you? No,
because we were gonna be together, but I saw the Seattle show and you saw the Portland show.
Yeah, that's what it was. I almost saw them on like Halloween in like 2015 or something like that. Yeah, I'm really sad that I didn't try harder to go to that. Yeah. But anyway,
yeah, I saw them open for Blink-182, and then I saw them recently, and that's the only time I've seen them. But yeah, they do put on a fantastic show.
They do, yeah. And I have like my favorite patch on my denim jacket I made, and it's like the guy's face on the cover of their Rain in July album, and I like drew it on this like patch, and I have a friend that calls them Deck Neep. And so I like wrote Neck Deep, but I like sewed with red thread the D and the like N like over the other letters. And I brought it to Warped Tour, and I got to like they signed it. Like I got to like do the signing at their table, and I think they thought it was, I don't remember too much what happened, but I know that Ben, the lead singer, was like, this is funny. And he said something about how like that's what Mark Hoppus calls them or something like that.
Oh my god,
I'm like,
amazing.
Yeah, and they signed it. So that's like my prize patch, like my prized possession on my battle jackets is
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, give us number 7.
Number 7 for me is the 1975.
Gotcha. Okay, so we already talked about the 1975.
Yeah.
7 for me is Taylor Swift.
I knew you were gonna have Taylor Swift on this list. If I was doing bands or artists, I didn't do artists, and I actually only had one solo artist that could have been on this list. But isn't. But if I was doing bands of all time, Taylor Swift might have to be on the list. Yeah. But I kind of dropped off the like middle school top band Taylor Swift, 100% all the way. Yeah. But and so her very early stuff. You know what? I'm gonna just like look up real quick like her discography, because there was definitely a point where I kind of like dropped off the Taylor Swift train, and I like support her from afar, but I don't really listen to her music anymore. Which
I was like a Taylor Swift fan like early, right? Like probably about the time you were, right? Like early Taylor Swift was like, really important to me. And then I got into more alternative music, and I dropped off the Taylor Swift train. And then the album 1989 came out, and I was really into it. So there was like I listened through Red, and then after Red, No more Taylor Swift.
That's when I kind of dropped off too.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the list. Speak Now, I was very, very into, and Red, I was like into, but I was starting to get less. And
Yeah.
then I've never heard 1989 or anything after that. I think I listened to just a little bit of Folklore when it came out.
Yeah.
But and you know what? And I feel like I should listen to more, but
Yeah.
I dropped off. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely had a time where I was like into alternative music and I was like, I don't listen to Taylor Swift anymore.
Yeah.
And like especially during like the Reputation time, I was kind of like, I am not into this.
Well, some of it's really bad. I remember
Yeah.
not hearing Taylor Swift for a long time. I was
Yeah.
in like freaking Kohl's or something, I don't know. And I
Yeah.
heard and I knew that a new Taylor Swift song had come out, but I didn't know what I had never
Yeah.
heard it. And I heard I think it was Look What You Made Me Do on the like speakers in the
Yeah.
store, and I was like,
Yeah.
is this the new Taylor Swift song? It's
Yeah.
bad.
It's not, yeah. And
So
Lover is the other album that I'm just like not into it. And that's the one with like the Panic at the Disco crossover.
Oh, yeah.
And that is like,
I
no offense,
forgot
Taylor, but,
that
like,
exists
that's
because
really
I think my brain
Yeah.
refuses to believe that it exists.
Yeah. So there is some Taylor Swift. Those two albums specifically, Lover and Reputation, I'm just like simply not into them. But early Taylor Swift, I was really into as like a younger person. 1989 has like this really weird like nostalgic like thing for me. And Red is my favorite Taylor Swift album that exists. And then once she released the two like last year or whatever, when they came out, Folklore and Evermore, I like gave them a chance. I was like, oh, I'll like see what it's about, you know. And then I was like, oh, it's like folky and like acoustic and has a lot more elements of like folk and indie rock than like pop.
Yeah, I've heard about that because I heard a lot of people or seen a lot of people talking about them after they came out, and that's pretty much what I heard, which is why I kind of want to give them a chance because it's really interesting how she seems to like everything that she does. I think can qualify as pop, but it's interesting the different subgenres that she dabbles in like within that. Yeah,
and I also think lyrically Taylor Swift is one of the best like songwriters. All of that to say, yes, Taylor Swift is on my list and notably above Neck Deep, which I think is very surprising. That was surprising to me when I made this list, but that's the truth. That's where I'm at. That's my number 7.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Definitely a lot of memories and like core like things that shaped me, I think, being a Taylor Swift fan in like middle school.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I think that was one of the first albums that I like bought with my own money.
Same.
It was like an EP. It's called like Bright Eyes or something like that. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift album. So number 6?
Yes.
My number 6 is Boston Manor.
This was it was gonna either be my number 10 was either the 1975 or Boston Manor. But wow. Boston Manor didn't make my list.
Wow. I know. Well, maybe it's not as surprising because like I can see that. Yeah, they are very important to me and I do love them a lot. They are actually well, now they're tied with the Wonder Years for the band that I've seen the most times. Oh wow. Mine is still Rush. I have not seen anyone more than 6 times yet. Anyone else? I mean, I probably will someday, but but yeah. And Boston Manor is relatively recent in my top bands. They're a more recent one, and it was really after England because I knew a few songs, notably Lead Feet, which is my favorite, before I went to England. And then when I went to England and I was looking up concerts near me, the first thing I did when I got there, and I saw that they were opening for Lower Than Atlantis, and I was like, I like kind of knew Lower Than Atlantis, I don't know, but I really was going like for Boston Manor in the beginning, because I knew them better, and I was like, I need to see Lead Feet specifically, because this is like one of my favorite pop punk bands of all time, like it was back then.
Yeah.
and then it only went like more from there. And then when they released
Yeah.
Welcome to the Neighborhood,
Yep.
I was a little late to the party, like for some
I
reason.
remember that because
Yeah.
I told you the new Boston Manor album is so good. You have to listen to it. And it was like 6 months later.
Yeah.
And I was like talking about it or something. And you were like, oh, I haven't listened to it yet. And I'm like, you need
Like,
to.
how have you not? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I finally did, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. Because
Yeah.
honestly, it could be an album of all time. It's
Yeah, that album is
so
one of my
good.
favorite albums.
Like that album specifically. And I also really like Glue. I'm gonna be honest. I haven't listened to it as much, but Welcome to the Neighborhood just hits like so specifically.
So
and they have definitely become like a band of all time. For me, like right now specifically, they're a defining band in like this era of my life.
They were very close to being on my list. And I was going back and forth between the 1975 and Boston Manor to be my number 10. And I ultimately went with the 1975 because I've liked them longer.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was room for both on my list, so they're both on there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is Fall Out Boy.
Ah, yes.
So
yes. Honestly, they could have like I was. I feel like a lot of the bands on the bottom part of my list are bands of all time. Yeah. And so I was like, they just have to be there somewhere, but they really could be like anywhere on the list. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, they are number 6 for me.
Yeah.
On my list. Good. Yeah. What's your number 5?
So number 5 for me is Neck Deep.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Because they have a very deeper, like they've been around for a while for me, and they were like very important to me in some like significant eras of my life. So
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you about Neck Deep. I don't know if I've ever asked you this. Do you think that they're neck deep from the top or the bottom?
Well, if they were neck deep from the top, it means they would have to be upside down. So I always pictured neck deep from the bottom, I guess.
Okay. That makes sense.
I should have asked him that when I met him.
Yeah.
It was really hard though when I met them to sign stuff because it was Warped Tour, so like someone was playing on a stage nearby, and so it was really hard to understand them and talk to them. But well, that's funny. Anyway,
my number 5 is the Beatles.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you actually have. I thought maybe I had the oldest band, but you actually have the oldest band.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Beatles, one, because I mean they're the Beatles, right? They're like classic. They inform a lot.
They are literally one of the bands of all time. Like not even to us, but like like the world, really. At least Western culture.
Yeah, and I think I mean I listen to the Beatles not like super frequently, but like enough that I would I have some Beatles vinyl. I have this like mixtape that my dad made of like a bunch of Beatles songs that I listen to all the time. And yeah, they were like obviously part of my childhood. I remember I got really into the album Rubber Soul in like late middle school, early high school, and for some reason that was like really important to me. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Beatles are classic. It's not like a hot take to be like, oh yeah, one of my favorite bands of all time is like the Beatles.
No, it's very, Although it's kind of funny recently in like internet culture in the last recent years, it's been like a thing to hate the Beatles.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, maybe they're not actually that good. And it's like, okay, well, first of all music is subjective. So, whatever. But they have an undeniable important influence on like the history of music like they are one of the bands of all time, whether people want to think so or not, or like them or not. Like it's just true.
Yeah. And I'm not here to say like whether or not in the 70s they were good people. Like I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. But like, I can appreciate the influence that their music has had on all of the music that I think is important today. And I do listen to them pretty frequently. So yeah, they are my number 5.
I guess I listen to them occasionally. They're just kind of like I acknowledge them and like I enjoy them. Yeah. My dad has some Beatles records that he's had for a long time that like a few years ago I like borrowed a handful and like listened to them. And in England they became pretty significant because we did like the thing where we visited the museum and Liverpool.
On the day we met?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or
that's
not the day we
significant in a
met,
way
but like,
too.
the day
Yeah,
we became
the
friends.
yeah,
The
yeah,
day in Liverpool.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
I think that I remember listening to uh Sergeant Pepper on the way to England on the plane.
yeah,
I think if I were to pick like a favorite Beatles album, that would be the one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah,
The
okay.
Beatles.
Yeah.
What's your number 4?
My number 4 is the Driver Era, actually.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. For which is another band that like I thought the 1975 was the only one, but the Driver Era is also a little bit like not like most of the other music that I listen to.
Yeah.
But they couldn't not be on the list because of their significance in my recent like era of
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah.
And because they're so the Driver Era is Ross and Rocky Lynch, who are brothers,
Yeah.
and they used to be in R5, who I got into my freshman year of high school,
Yeah.
and they are like the reason other than Rush, like the second reason
Yeah.
why they were the first band that I was really into, that I was into not because my friends liked them or not because
Yeah.
of anything else, but because I discovered them and I fell in love with them. And then that
Yeah.
was really the beginning of me like defining my personality around music, was being really into R5.
Yeah.
And so I've just followed them, and it's really weird, and it's like a really specifically strong parasocial relationship with these people in this family
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I have known about them and followed all of their projects since, I mean, 2011, 2012
Yeah.
when I discovered them. And so R5 isn't a thing anymore. And these two brothers like branched off to that and created the Driver Era. And I don't know. I honestly cannot say, because this, we're not in this timeline, if I would like their music as much if I didn't like already had been following them as people
Yeah.
for so
Yeah.
long. And I feel like one of the reasons why I like it so much is because I am like very deeply ingrained just like in their like timeline at this point in my life.
Yeah.
But it's just true. Like they influence
Yeah.
me a lot. I am a fan of them as people and their music and their art and everything. And so
Yeah.
yeah, and that's why they're so high on this list, is because they're like I'm just like very, I mean,
Yeah.
it's what, like half of my life at this point I've been
Yeah.
like, so yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty significant.
Yeah. I knew the name R5 and the Driver Era because I'm friends with you, but I like hadn't really like paid attention to their music at all. But Abe made me a playlist for my birthday last year.
Oh yeah.
That had a song by the Driver Era on it. So he
That's
knows
so
about
funny.
them and he's into
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They like sold out the Roseland, and there's a part of
Yeah.
me that's like that like is shocked if anyone else ever knows about them.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah, because I'm like, this is just these are my people. No one else
Yeah.
has them. They're just mine. But that's like not
Yeah.
that's the parasocial relationship talking. That's
Yeah.
not reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of funny. What was it? Did you like it? The
I
song
don't
that was on
remember
the
what the
playlist?
song title was. I don't remember what the song title was.
Oh.
I could look really quick. But yeah, it was like it has a purple album cover. I know that.
Oh yeah, they've only had 2 albums, and that was their first one.
Yeah. My number 4, is that what we're on? Oh,
Yes,
it's Flash
yeah.
Drive. Flash
Oh,
Drive.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, anyways, my number 4 is Green Day, which we already talked about.
Oh
But
yes.
Green
Yeah,
Day is
very
this
important.
high on my list because of what I was talking about. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like very
Yeah.
core to my core important to
Yeah,
me.
and like I said earlier, in the bands of all time list, they would probably be up around the same area too. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so number 3 for
Mhm.
me is Palais Royale.
Really?
Yeah.
Palaye Royale is not on my list.
Wow. That kind
Yeah.
of surprises me.
I really like them. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They are like a band that I like a lot. I think I feel slightly too disconnected to them now, and that's why
yeah. Yeah.
I think I don't feel connected to like the fan base. Like I'm just not that way,
Yeah.
kind of. I don't know. And like they are very like, yeah. And so I think that's kind of where I like find a little bit of distance now. But
Mhm.
and also
I get that.
I became a fan of them after you told me about them, and then I don't know, it was just kind of like a peak. There was like a peak of when I liked them, and it kind of went down. Like I found them, liked them, and then kind of dropped off a little bit. I still like them though. Like I would still like, listen to their new album, see them on tour, like anything like that. But yeah, tell me about why you.
Yeah. I feel like for me, they're still kind of like just getting started. And I discovered them. They only had one album out. I think now they have 3.
Yes.
Yeah, they only have one out. They only had one, and it was the last year that I went to Warped Tour, which was like the last like real Warped Tour kind of. Like you went to the actual last Warped Tour. I went to like the one before, and I believe it was at that. And before Warped Tour, all the years that I got to go, I would look at the list of all of the bands playing, and if I didn't know any of them, I would listen to like their top 5 or 10 songs on Spotify to just like see what they were about and to listen to them and see if I liked them. And I heard Palaye Royale, and they were definitely one of the bands that was immediately like, okay, I have to see this band. Like, this is now a band that I am going to listen to before and after Warped Tour now. Like, I really liked them. And and that year at Warped Tour, I wore a replica of the cheerleading uniforms from the My Chemical Romance Teenagers music video that my mom had made me because she's amazing. And I thought, oh, this will be a hit at Warped Tour. And no one freaking recognized it. I'm like, everyone here is a fake fan because no one recognized, and someone could have and just didn't say anything. Right. But I had multiple people compliment me on the like, cheerleading costume, but no one was like, oh my god, this is the, uniform from the Teenagers music video. Like, no one was, I'm like, what? Hello?
Yeah.
I even had a couple people who, when I told them what it was from, they had never heard of it. They didn't even know Teenagers by My Chemical. Yeah, I'm like, what are you doing at Warped Tour?
Okay, that's surprising to me.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Wow.
But I was seeing a different band, and I wanted to do, it was another small band that I was a fan of. And right after their set, they were doing a little like photo thing to like meet them. And so I did that. And so I actually missed like the first half of Palaye Royale's set, which Warped Tour sets are really short. So, but I made it. I ran like across the Expo Center parking lot to get to I think it was like the Full Sail stage. It was like the smallest stage at Warped Tour that year. And I made it. I believe it was like right before they played Teenagers. They played Teenagers by My Chemical Romance. And amazing. I didn't know they were going to do. This is one of those things that makes me question whether or not there's like a god or something. Is because I'm like, what are the chances that I was going to like wear a replica of the thing from this video and this band played a cover of the song? Like, hello. Yeah. So So I made it in time for that, and I heard like a couple other of their songs, and it was so fun. And it was like also the end of the day. So I was so tired, like it was reaching the end of the day. Yeah. But I like absolutely lost it. I was like going insane. So that was super fun. And then I met them afterwards. Yeah. They were super sweet, and they recognized my uniform. Like Remington was specifically like, this is so freaking cool. And I was like, finally, someone gets it. And so and I have a picture of that moment too, which is really cute. They're very tall in real life.
They are. Yeah.
So, and then we've seen them together as well. Yeah. Live, and super fun shows. And I am a fan of them. And I am a little bit, I feel disconnected from like their fan base. I think part of it's just because a lot of it's so young. I mean, like the active online fan base, is so young. Yeah. Which is nothing wrong with that. It's just, like
we're older.
Yeah. But I still do feel like they're still like in their beginnings, I think, and I am here for that, and I definitely feel like I'm gonna be like, I saw Palaye Royale when they played at Warped Tour, and like I was there in the beginning type of like mood, I guess, and and I'm still into them. I'm not I mean, they're pretty high on my list. I feel like I'm slightly more casual now, but they're still like up there for me. Like I'm still like, I'm here.
I definitely
Yeah.
like them a lot, and I saw them at Warped Tour when I went, and then yeah, we saw them together, and I met them both times because we did like VIP when we saw them like
Oh yeah.
headline,
Mm-hmm.
and they like I don't know, they're just very sweet, and like I think as people and as artists they're very like good. I feel very disconnected from their fan base, and I also feel like yeah, I've just like become I just was never like an obsessed fan, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always kind of been like slightly more removed, and I think that's why they just didn't go on my list, but I do really like their music, and I do
Yeah.
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 And I think that they're sweet guys. Like I remember they like remembered my name or something, and that was really sweet.
That is really sweet.
Yeah.
Wow. I would not remember people's names if I it was so
No, I mean it was definitely because they like thought I had cancer or something, but
well, yeah.
so, you know, but
I mean,
still, either way, they're
yeah.
still sweet. Yeah, my number 3 is the Mountain Goats.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a dad band, although
Mm-hmm.
my dad didn't talk about them until after I started talking about them, and he was like, "Oh yeah, the Mountain Goats."
Oh, that's funny.
Um, but yeah, I like the Mountain Goats. I liked them in high school. I didn't really get into them like a lot until college. I think like even late college really was like when I got like really into them. But I was aware of them, and like there was one album that I really liked in high school, and then I kind of like lost track because they're a lot more like acoustic folk indie type stuff than like rock. But John Darnielle, the lead singer of the Mountain Goats, he's a really interesting guy, and he does have a lot of like rock roots, and that does come through like in his music, even though a lot of it is very like folky and like indie. I guess like you can still hear his like influence of like death metal, you know, like you
Oh,
can hear it
interesting.
like in
Yeah.
his music. But yeah, I think he as a person is one of the most interesting musicians I've ever like encountered. His
Yeah.
discography is absolutely chaotic. Like it's
Isn't
so
yeah, don't they have a very intimidating discography.
they have like 30 albums.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But honestly, all of them are pretty good. And like there are a
Okay.
few that are like really good. But yeah, the Mountain Goats, I have to say that they are one of my faves, and also they're becoming really popular and like trendy now, which I
Hmm.
always have a complicated relationship with,
I
but
know.
you know,
Yeah.
it's good. Other people need to know that they're good.
Yeah, I know like nothing by them. So if you wanted to send me a handful of songs that you think are like these songs because their discography is so intimidating, then you
Yeah,
could totally do that. I know
yeah,
that I've seen he has like a funny tweet about Rush. That's like all I know about him.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
remember what it was, but yeah.
He's got good opinions. I think you would really enjoy him as an artist. I will send you
Mm.
some songs because
Yeah.
I think some of it is more like indie than you would normally listen to, but I think you would like it anyways.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
you
right.
never
What's your
know.
number 2?
My number 2 is The Wonder Years.
Well, you know they're on my list too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't
um,
even, I mean, for you, I don't even have to explain it. Like, you know.
yeah, I
But
get
for
it.
everyone else, the Wonder Years, they're one of the bands that I was getting into again in high school when I was getting into other like pop punk bands,
Yeah,
like Neck Deep. I got into the Wonder Years about the same time as I got into Neck Deep.
yeah,
And then it's pretty much just been, uphill since then. Like I don't even know what else to say. Like
yeah.
they've been,
The Wonder Years just are.
yeah,
They just
like
are.
very tied into like friendships that I've had
Yeah,
and moments and memories, and their music is just so emotionally charged. And we talked a lot about the Wonder Years, so we don't even have to
yeah.
say,
We
but
don't need to say all of this because we have a literal entire podcast episode where we talk about the
yeah,
Wonder Years.
if you want to know more about our opinion about the Wonder Years and why they are number 2 on my like this era in my life top bands, and at this point they've become a top band of all time,
Yeah,
then you can go listen to that podcast. But like, yeah,
yeah,
definitely top
yeah,
of like this list and of all time, the Wonder
yeah,
Years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, considering that I've just said that the Wonder Years are on my list, I'm about to say what my number 2 is, and it's not the Wonder Years, so you can
Oh, okay,
tell
okay. Yeah.
where the Wonder Years
Oh
land
my
on my
goodness.
list. But
Okay. What is your number 2?
my number two, and this is shocking,
Okay.
is John Denver.
Do I know a John Denver song?
Yes, you do. He wrote Take Me Home Country Roads.
Oh, Take Me Home Country Roads is your second artist.
Yes, but it's more complicated than that, okay?
Like current as well. I can definitely see them being an all time for
Yeah.
you, but like very current too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the story. Is one John Denver is my dad's favorite musician of all time.
Okay, so it's the dads. It's the dads
Yes.
that are the influence here.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you know, I was raised on John Denver, like raised on John Denver. And this was my artist that I had in mind when you were talking about Rush.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was completely raised on John Denver. I heard most of John Denver's discography just like in my dad's car. Like anytime he would take me to school, you know, whatever, we would constantly be listening to that kind of thing. And then in college, I was like, oh yeah, you know, I was like homesick or something, or I don't know, I was like nostalgic, and I was like, okay, I'll just listen to some John Denver to like, you know, feel some feelings, you know. And a lot of it is kind of like cheesy, right? Like there's like Take Me Home Country Roads.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying that's like my favorite song, right? But like there's also some more like deep cuts. And I don't know, I mean John Denver is very famous. So he's not alive anymore, but he was famous, I guess.
When did he die? Did you ever get to see him?
No, he died.
He...
he died the year I was born, actually.
Oh, okay. So, yeah.
Okay. But my dad got to see him though.
Good.
Which is important. And I think he actually got to see him in Jacksonville, Oregon, which is like 30 minutes from my house.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but John Denver actually died in a plane crash, so it wasn't like he was old.
Oh. Man, so many musicians died in plane crashes.
I know.
For some reason.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal with that is, but yeah. So, anyways, John Denver was important. And then in college, I like started listening to more like deep cuts, and I was kind of like, oh, the songwriting here really like speaks to me in like a certain way. And then once I started collecting vinyl, so like my dad, this was like my junior year of college, senior year of college, was when my dad gave me his old record player, and he only had one record left that he had kept. Because I mean, I've talked about this a little bit, but like in my family, we don't like keep things. It's like once it's irrelevant, just get rid of it, you know. And so the only record my dad had kept was one John Denver record, and it was my favorite John Denver like album. So he gave it to me, and that was my first record that I had. And after that, I started, when I would like go to the record store, you know, John Denver records were always like cheap because they were like, old, you know, and like, you know. And so I started kind of like collecting some of them, and now the music that I listen to the most on vinyl is John Denver.
Yeah. Okay.
I have most of his discography, which he doesn't have a huge discography, but it's at least like, I don't know, 15 albums or so.
Oh, geez.
And I have most of it on vinyl. And there are some albums that, and it is like kind of country, and it's definitely folk music a lot, like, you know, folk rock. But yeah, his songwriting speaks to me a lot, and it also is very core to like, you know, how I was raised. Like I was raised with two parents who like love music and love like the type of music that I like now, you know, like they both were like into the rock scene when they were teenagers and like doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's funny.
And so yeah, I don't know, John Denver makes it onto my list, like he can't not. And then I was like, okay, where is he gonna go on this list? And it ended up being number 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess John Denver is that important to me.
Yeah. My number 1.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you could maybe be thinking about who it is, because it's like, you know, what band is My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, I knew it was gonna.
Yep.
I knew it was gonna be. I was wondering if you would put The Wonder Years at number 1 or My Chemical Romance at number 1. But
It
it does
has to be
make
My Chemical
sense.
Romance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does make
Because
sense.
they're also one of the bands that I got into in high school, but they're like one of the first bands that I got into in high school when I was getting into like alternative
Yeah.
bands. And it was like months maybe after they broke up. Like it was not very long after they broke up. And what's kind of funny is they were on the radio when we were young, but I never heard them. Like I remember
Yeah.
getting older and people being like, "Oh yeah, this song was on the radio." And I'm like, I had never heard any of the songs that people say were on the radio. And I think Teenagers was the first song that I heard actually to like watch the
Mhm.
music video with my sister and was like, "Oh, I'm into this." And then yeah, and they're also the band that I'm the most involved with like the online community as well.
Yeah.
Like I'm part of like a Discord of My Chemical Romance fans and like oh,
Yeah.
this is also news. You don't know this. I'm going to see them 2 times this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they like right before the pandemic
Yeah.
announced, yeah, because it was on Halloween. They announced the
Yeah.
Shrine Show in California, and then and I didn't go, of course, because it was like one show and it was expensive and whatever. And then they announced a whole tour, a like reunion tour, which I believe, and they haven't said anything, and they refuse to do interviews about it. I believe that this is it. They're doing this tour. I don't think they're going to release any new music, and then they're going to be done. That's what I believe. That's my theory. And my
Yeah.
sister and I got tickets for Tacoma. It was a very big deal. We spent too much money on it, but I literally was like, I never expected this
Yeah.
to happen in my entire
Yeah.
life. It was like they
Yeah.
are simply not a band anymore.
Yeah.
But I was like, I will literally spend any amount of money to see them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is it. I believe this is it. And so I
Yeah.
did. And then just a few days ago, they were like, oh, we're going to add a whole bunch more US dates now. And one of them is Portland at the Moda Center. And yeah, and my sister is like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. She's just going to do Tacoma. We're like, we got decent seats for Tacoma. She's just going to stick with that.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? If I can, because they are my favorite band, I'm going to try to see them again. And
Yeah.
so, and Justin was like, I'll go with you. And so we got they're nosebleeds, but I was like, I'm not going to spend another, like, way too much money. I'm just going to get, like,
Yeah.
some of the less just to be there, like, just to
Yeah.
have the experience as many times as I can. And so they went on sale when I was at work. And so I was, like, on the phone with Justin and I took a break and I actually bought them on my phone because it wasn't
Wow.
working on his computer, which was stressful.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm gonna see them twice. I don't even know where to begin. It could be an entire podcast, so I won't get too much into it because we
Yeah.
are already over time.
I know.
But
Yeah.
they are so incredibly important to me. I love their music. Every single song that they have, I love, and I think is musically genius. And that's just like I absolutely love this band so much. I don't even know like what else to say. Like they're very
Yeah.
influential on like every other musical and artsy thing in my life. And as
Yes.
people, I think they're interesting and I'm into them. And yeah, just like I don't even know what else to say. They are
Yeah.
the band for me. And
Yeah.
there's a lot that compare and a lot that could fight for first place, but at this point in my life and for a while before this and like, right now, they are number one.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you will notice that My Chemical Romance isn't on my list, which is maybe a little bit of an oversight, but I don't really think it is. I think that is truly how I feel. And it's because I never got into My Chemical Romance. Like obviously I like them. I like their music and I think that they're very influential on like the emo scene, right? Like they're definitely an important band and I like their music. Like everything I've ever heard from them. Like it's not like I'm like, nah, I don't really like it. It's like, no, I like it. I think I just never quite like had a moment where I got like all the way in to My Chemical Romance. And so then now I'm just kind of like, yeah, like I like them. I could not like I don't know all the lore. I could not like name every single song by them. Like I honestly don't even think I could name every single album by them.
Which is funny because they only have 4.
Yeah, I mean like
Yeah.
I know like the Black Parade obviously, but like
Yeah.
other than that.
Wait,
Yeah. So yeah, I like appreciate My Chemical Romance and there's nothing about them that I'm like, oh, I don't like this. It's just that it just never happened for me to like be completely like a super fan, you know? So yeah, they're not on my list. I would say all of these artists that I mentioned are like more significant to my musical like
Yeah.
life
Yeah,
than
definitely.
My Chemical
Yeah.
Romance. Yeah, my number one is the Wonder Years.
Yep.
It just simply had to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like like we said,
Understandable.
we talked so long about them on that other episode, so I just like won't say anything else. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a reason they're my number one.
Yep. And
Yeah.
we know it. We know it.
Yeah.
Don't even. I think yeah.
I know we're already over time, but I do have two things that I like must say
Okay.
before we end.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is that we could talk about honorable mentions a little bit. But for me, there's one really specific honorable mention, which is there was like a time in my life that Panic at the Disco would have not only been on this list, but been probably number one on this list.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
and I noticed
very similar.
it wasn't on your list either. But yeah, there was a time in my life that Panic at the Disco was extremely important to me.
Yeah.
And now they don't even make the list. And that's something to think about, I guess.
Yeah, it is. You know what? Same. Yeah. There was a time in my life where my favorite bands were the Unholy Trinity, as some might say, which was MCR, Fall Out Boy, and Panic at the Disco, and they were my favorite bands. Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
So, yeah. They're definitely an honorable mention. Do you want to like wind down by kind of just like listing our honorable mentions real quick?
That's the only one that I am. I mean, I sort of said like Boston Manor is also an honorable mention for me.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think is really important that I say, and I think this is, I assume that this is true for you, but I will not speak for you.
Mm-hmm.
That I was looking back at my list and just really noticing that every single band or person on my list is white, and every single person except Taylor Swift is a man.
Yeah.
And so like I guess one, that's part, like, I mean, it's on me, right? Like I have been expanding my listening to include a lot more diversity, but when I put together a list of 10 bands that are important to me, this is what came out. And I stand, like, these are the bands that are important to me and I stand by that. But I also notice that, like, okay, what does that say about like my listening? And
and also,
you know,
just like part of the reason why that is because people are more likely to be exposed to what is most popular, and what is most popular in the rock scene is white men, which is unfortunate. Yep. And of course, and like you said, you are too, and I am, like, more recently in my life, like very purposefully seeking out diversity in terms of, you know, gender and race and everything like that in music. And I do have a lot of bands that I really like now that are diverse, you know, in terms of like not just being white men. But yeah, no, I think that was like a good thing to point out because it's true.
Yeah. My 2 points were like, I like, part of that is on me, and I have been doing more of that work like on my own, but I guess none of those bands are like quite at the point where they're like as influential on me as the 10 that I just listed. But then too, like, this is a reflection of the rock scene. Like, rock, I like rock and pop punk music, and the bands that I like are rock and pop punk, and those bands are overwhelmingly white and male, like, in the scene. So
but it's changing a little bit. I think it's changing like very slowly, but it is, which is cool. It's really cool to see. Especially as a woman who is enthusiastic about music and like wants to be in a band and in the scene, you know, like, it is very important to me, specifically in terms of gender, you know, so well, my list, just real quick, of honorable mentions that I have here.
You tell me some more.
I'll just kind of like list them off, because the ones that I had as honorable mentions that didn't make it on the list but I feel like are still important to me are Arctic Monkeys, Panic at the Disco, Taking Back Sunday, Seether, Breaking Benjamin, Chevelle, The Front Bottoms, and Brand New.
I agree with all of those, I think. I don't know. I mean, Weezer is one for me.
Oh, yeah, for you. I'm kind of surprised they weren't on your list.
I know. Weezer. MCR, I think, is like, important to me. Palaye Royale is important to me. They're just not important enough to be on my list.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. Yeah, all the ones you said are true for me as well, I
Yeah.
think.
I just I wrote mine all
like
down.
Matchbox
So.
20.
Oh,
Yeah,
Matchbox
Matchbox
20. Okay.
20 is important to me. There's a lot of like 90s bands. REM is kind of important to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
We
this was
do
a
not
very
have
good
time.
conversation. No, we do not have
Yeah.
time for a Klosterman question.
No, it's not happening today.
But yeah, we
Well,
obviously need to do more podcasts about these types of things
yeah,
because we need to
we
get
have a
all
lot to
those
say.
thoughts out. Yeah, we have a lot to say.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
okay, well, this
yeah.
was very fun. A good idea.
Yeah. Yes. Until next time, I love you.
I love you too.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.